Imagine booking a crazy space trip just to leave the planet and travel to another one that takes 120 years to reach. And you'll spend all that time asleep. But then something goes wrong and you wake up way too early, only to find yourself alone on the spaceship. What do you think you'd do? Well, that's exactly what happened to our hero. And if you want to know his story, stay with us till the end of the video. Our movie begins in space aboard the spaceship Avalon, which is heading to a new planet called Homestead. On this ship, there's a crew of astronauts and 5,000 passengers, but they're all in a state of hibernation, a process that keeps them asleep inside a hibernation pod that halts all their vital functions until they wake up 120 years later upon arriving at the new planet. The spaceship passes through a group of asteroids, which causes several malfunctions. However, it's equipped to automatically repair all its issues, so everything gets fixed except for one malfunction in the hibernation pod of a man named James. At that moment, James's hibernation stops, and the pod opens. He wakes up to a recorded message and thinks he has arrived at Homestead. He gets up, goes to his room, and gets ready to meet the rest of the passengers, but he's shocked to find no one else there. So he starts roaming around the ship, trying to find anything that can help him understand what happened. He discovers the ship is massive, like a full moving city with advanced technology. Eventually, he finds a guidance system and asks it where the ship's officials are. When he reaches the ship's command area, he finds it empty. That's when he learns the location of the captain and crew quarters and heads there to find answers. But the door is locked and access isn't allowed for his class. He's shocked to discover the ship is running on autopilot with no crew present. At that point, he decides to use the ship's tech to ask about their journey. He learns that there are still 90 years and a few weeks left before they arrive at Homestead, and they had left Earth around 30 years ago. That's when he realizes he woke up way too early. He tries to send a message to the company that runs the voyage, which is based on Earth. In the message, he explains that his hibernation pod malfunctioned and he woke up way too early. But when he sends the message, he learns it'll take 19 years just to be delivered, and the reply will arrive in 55 years. He starts wandering through the ship again until he finds a bartender standing at the bar. He's surprised to see someone else, so he approaches him, but it turns out to be just a robot named Arthur. That's when he loses all hope of finding any other people, and the robot becomes his only companion. The next day, he goes to eat breakfast, but finds that his class is only allowed a specific meal, and he has to eat the same thing every day. So he decides not to give up. Since he's a mechanical engineer, he tries to fix his hibernation pod, but it doesn't work, and he gets trapped inside it until he barely manages to escape. Then he tries to open the pilot's and crew quarters, but no method works. Months pass like this, day by day, with nothing but the robot Arthur to talk to. He starts opening up to him about his troubles. Arthur advises him to enjoy life if he can't change it. So James decides to follow his advice and breaks into a golden-class passenger room to live in instead of his simple cabin. He starts trying out all the fun activities on the ship to enjoy himself. He plays basketball, dances, and eats at the ship's restaurants. But because of his depression, he neglects his appearance and the cleanliness of his surroundings. He stops caring about anything because he's living alone. A whole year passes like that, and he keeps drinking because he's lost hope in life. One day, he finds a spacesuit that allows him to go outside and experience real space. He's tied by a rope for safety. He rushes to try it and enjoys the breathtaking view of space. But then, he decides to end his life. He's about to open the door without wearing the suit. At the very last second, he backs out and breaks down in tears. At that moment, he finds himself next to a hibernation pod containing a woman named Aurora. He's instantly drawn to her and quickly searches the passenger files to learn more. He watches her video explaining why she joined the journey and finds out she's a writer and journalist who wanted to experience a unique adventure to make her writing more original. James spends all his time sitting beside her, watching her videos as if he's living with her. Eventually, he decides he wants to actually live with her, and the idea of waking her up from hibernation starts to grow in his mind. But he resists it, knowing that doing so would ruin her life. He has no one to talk to except Arthur, so he tries to vent his stress to him, but it doesn't help, and he tells Arthur that he's just a machine and can't understand what he's going through and that he needs a real human being. Still, he keeps hesitating about waking her up. To get the idea out of his mind, he tries to distract himself with anything else. Call ChatGPT, but in the end, he can't resist and decides to wake her up from hibernation. So he goes and opens her pod, then sneaks away before she sees him. Aurora wakes up and finds there's no one else on the ship, which confuses her until she runs into James. He tells her there was a malfunction in his pod, and he takes her around to explain that they still have 89 years left until they arrive. So they woke up way too early. She says they have to find a solution, but he shows her everything he already tried and how none of it worked. When she finds out he's been awake for a whole year, she starts to panic, but he calms her down and explains that returning to hibernation requires special equipment, just like what was used before they left Earth. Still, she doesn't fully believe there's no way to fix fix it, but she decides to get some rest for now. James, on the other hand, sits with the robot Arthur, feeling guilty for waking her up. He asks Arthur to keep the secret, that James was the one who woke her, and not to tell Aurora until he's ready to confess. The next morning at breakfast, Aurora is surprised by the food he's been eating for a whole year. Since she's from the gold class passengers, she gets him some better food. She starts suggesting different solutions to their problem, but he tells her he already tried everything she mentioned, and none of it worked. Still, she doesn't give up and keeps repeating all the steps he once tried. Eventually, she decides to write the book she had planned to write on Homestead, but instead of writing about her new life there, she writes about what she's gone through. She starts building a daily routine and finally decides to write about James's experience during the journey and why he joined the voyage in the first place. He tells her that he's a mechanical engineer who wanted to start a new life in a new world, a life he could build on his own terms. From that moment, they begin getting closer and start talking more. He finds out that she had booked a round-trip ticket. She had planned to stay in Homestead for a year, then return to Earth to talk about her journey, which would make her the only journalist to have had such an experience. That's when she remembers the dream that's now been shattered. So, to distract her from her sadness, James takes her to explore the fun activities he used to do. Time passes, and they grow even closer, so much so that he recreates a famous building from her hometown knowing she misses it. Later, he asks her out on a date, and she agrees immediately. She tells him about her father, that he was a famous writer too, but died when she was young. James tells her he wants to know everything about her life. Then he takes her to try the space suit and go outside the ship. She's amazed by the view and the experience, and they both confess their feelings for each other. They start living together and enjoying life, and she continues writing her book. He surprises her with real flowers, one stored on the ship to be planted later on Homestead. She's overjoyed because she loves real plants. Everything goes well until her birthday, when James gives her an engagement ring. When Arthur sees them together, he tells them they look perfect for each other. Aurora responds that there are no secrets between them anymore. They've become one. But that's when Arthur slips and reveals that James is the one who woke her up, and he tells her how much James struggled with that decision. She's shocked and confronts James. When he doesn't deny it, she breaks down because he essentially ended her life. Every time he tries to talk to her, she avoids him until she finally snaps and starts hitting him to let out her anger. So he uses the ship's intercom to talk to her and explain why he did it, how much he was suffering, and that when he saw her, he was about to end his life. So in a way, she saved him, but she doesn't care. She tells him to stay away from her because he ruined her life. After that, James starts noticing some small glitches in the ship's systems every now and then, and we learn that the number of malfunctions is steadily increasing, yet no one is noticing. Meanwhile, Aurora starts recalling her memories with the people she lost. In the meantime, James tries to make it up to her in his own way. Knowing how much she loves real plants, he plants a real tree right in the middle of the ship, but suddenly a malfunction hits the ship's system. Some tasks stop working, and even the elevator breaks down. That's when they hear the voice of the ship's captain asking who planted a tree on his ship. They go meet him and explain everything, that James has been awake for 2 years and Aurora for 1. He's surprised that the hibernation pods malfunctioned, but since he's the captain, he has access to restricted areas on the ship. He tries to check the ship's failures, but there's no clear data. He tells them he'll inspect the hibernation pods. James notices that the captain seems unwell, but the captain reassures him, saying it's just the side effects of waking up from hibernation. He's shocked at how many issues the ship has, and after inspecting the pods, he discovers that his own pod failed due to a series of strange malfunctions. As for Aurora's pod, he realizes James was the one who woke her up. But he gets weak again and decides to rest and continue investigating the ship's problems the next day. That night, a new malfunction happens. The ship loses gravity for a bit before stabilizing again. James and Aurora wake up the captain quickly to tell him what happened. He realizes the problem was due to a collision with large objects, something that isn't a good sign. He digs deeper and finds that the first impact happened 2 years ago, and since then, they've kept increasing. He also learns that the main systems suffered serious damage due to an overload, so they must find the source and fix it. They realize that the systems expected to fail next are the ones responsible for sustaining life, meaning their lives are now in real danger. The captain takes them to the control room, but he passes out. They take him to the medical robot, which reveals he only has a few hours to live due to multiple organ failure caused by all the malfunctions in his pod. The bigger shock, there's no treatment that can help him. He's dying, so he leaves them and sits alone for a while. Suddenly, another malfunction hits the ship. They go looking for the captain and find him wearing his suit. He tells them he feels death coming. He advises them to take care of each other, gives James his ID so he can access restricted systems and fix the issues, and then dies. That's when the ship's systems start going out of control. James heads to the maintenance room and asks Aurora for help. They discover that the malfunctions are getting worse and nothing is working right. Arthur the robot even starts behaving strangely and smashing things until James shuts him down. Then they go to the main maintenance bay to inspect everything and find the root of the problem. problem. They discover the power generator is down. They try to open it, but it's jammed. So James forces it open, and suddenly, air starts being sucked out because of an open hatch. James holds on and manages to close the hatch, but realizes there are multiple breaches in the ship caused by the meteors. They keep searching until they discover the meteors damaged the reactor control computer, causing it to overheat dangerously. James starts repairing the first problem, the control room, which was also damaged by the meteor strikes. He tries to cool the reactor, but it only works through manual override. He attempts it, but the outer door won't open. It needs to be opened manually so they can vent the heat and cool the reactor. There's no solution other than opening it himself. Aurora's terrified, but he assures her it's the only way. Otherwise, the ship and the 5,000 passengers on board will all die. He manages to convince Aurora to open the reactor door while he opens the external one. Aurora opens it, and at the same time, James opens the outer door. The heat vents, the reactor cools down, and they save the ship. But James gets thrown out into space, and even the tether connecting him to the ship breaks. Aurora quickly suits up and rushes out to save him. She manages to pull him back into the ship, but it's too late. He's unconscious. She takes him straight to the medical robot, but it tells her he's dead. She begs it to resuscitate him, but it refuses because she doesn't have the right passenger tier. Then she remembers the captain's ID. She uses it. The robot resuscitates James, and he finally wakes up. They've now saved the ship from all the massive damage it had. Afterward, they start repairing everything that was destroyed. As for the captain's body, they honor his final request by releasing it into space with his suit. Later, James tells Aurora he discovered something while fixing the ship. He found a hibernation function in the medical robot. It can stop all biological activity in the body, meaning someone can go back into hibernation. But before she gets excited, he tells her the problem. There's only one robot, so only one of them can use it. James insists she should be the one to go back into hibernation so she can wake up on Homestead and live her dream. But Aurora tells him that would mean he'll be alone, and when she wakes up, he'll be gone. So instead, James proposes. He gives her the ring after everything on the ship is fixed. She accepts and decides to stay and live her life with him instead of returning to hibernation. 88 years later, the ship finally arrives at Homestead. When the crew wakes up, they're shocked to find natural plants all over the ship. James had turned it into a massive garden. Aurora had left them a recorded message with her book, explaining everything that happened. She tells them that instead of holding on to a dream of someplace far away, they chose to turn their place into the dream and built a life together filled with happiness. And that's how the movie ends. If you liked the video, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments.